many people may not drink alcohol, but they're not doing it because they understand there's harm in it and whatnot, right? So as a Muslim, there's two different things. One is, first of all, why don't I drink alcohol? Well, first of all, I'm not allowed to by my God, right? By the one who created me, he didn't want me to use, to eat and drink, but he just forbade certain things, and I'm not going to touch that out of respect, out of submission, out of being grateful. So if me being grateful to Allah is for me to obey His laws. Okay, so that's the bare minimum. Or I can say, well, I don't want to be punished in hellfire. So those are things. And then the question becomes like, okay, well, what are some of the wisdom behind doing this? Okay, now, just to mention a very good example. So what would happen is when we ask the question of what are some of the wisdoms, right? So first of all, we may not know the 100% of the wisdom, right? That would depend on what we have seen in life, what our experiences is, what kind of research data we have access to. And today, I may know some wisdom based on my limited knowledge, but someone who has way more knowledge of something else, let's say alcohol or substances, what have you, or doctors, they may be able to appreciate it way more than me. And 10 years from now, we may be able to appreciate more as a community, as a humanity, because now we have more data. So the example that Justin gave about washing hands, right? Or cleaning yourself, and then especially the mouth and the nose, right? Now we all appreciate it.
Particularly that.
Yeah, so now we can all appreciate it, but hey, we have a different appreciation of it in the last 3 years than what we had like 10 years ago. The wisdom was still there, right? It's just that we now we can appreciate it better, right? But why do we do it? We do it because that's what we have been taught, right? That's what Allah has said. This is how you clean. So He is not making it super hard. It's still practical, right? That you can still do it at work, at parks, during job, whatever you are. So you don't need to go and take a full shower or put yourself into like some sort of a desanitizer or what have you. It's still practical. It's still doable. It gives you that physical cleansing, and then you're going for spiritual cleansing, right? So the main thing I'm trying to say is that when it comes to the question, why we do it? For Allah, right? To be grateful, to obey Him, to submit to Him. Next question is, okay, let's research some of the wisdom behind that law. Okay? So some of the generic wisdom we have been given in the Quran and the Hadith and the Sunnah, and some come with practice, with life, with reflection, with research, as a very basic example of, this thing. Now, someone would say that, okay, well, in general, yeah, someone said, well, I don't get distracted with girls, so what, right? But so in general, as a community, we don't pray together. So you're not praying side by side. They can be, in the same room though, right? So like obviously at this center, we have different rooms as well. But technically speaking, if you are within the same room, that's fine, right? It's just that you wouldn't be facing each other. You'll be facing, the Qibla direction, or they will be behind you or on the side or what have you. They don't have to be necessarily in a totally separate room or a different building, right? But I'm saying that any such law can be looked at from that lens, and that is open to research, right? Maybe you may do some research and you may come up with something I didn't even know, or I just didn't read, right? That doesn't mean that I'm following that because of that law, okay? The other thing that came up was like why 5 prayers, and Justin used the word recommended. So we actually have 5 different layers of law. Any of you guys know about that? Really? How can you be a Muslim? Just kidding. Okay, so here's the difference, right? So there's an obligation, things that you must do. So 5 prayers or 5 times of prayers are something that you must do. And another thing that he mentioned, which is very good reflection, is if you're not praying, what are you doing? So what this signifies is that let's say if you're working or you're making money or you're doing trade or you're educating yourself, you realize that, look, yes, I'm trying to be still productive. I'm not wasting my time. However, me pausing and taking 5-10 minutes will help me connect with the bigger purpose. I'm not a servant or a slave or a worshiper of this job or this education. I can stop and I can just take 5-10 minutes, connect with that higher power, realize my boundaries, my values, my my true purpose, and then go from there. So that's an obligation. You must do it, right?
Were you referring to 5 pillars?
You
mean the 5 pillars?
No, I'm saying there are 5 different types of law or commands, if you will, or classification. So this is something you must do, right? Which in Arabic is called fard. Fard or wajib. Okay, just testing. So that's just like, okay, so that's stuff you must do. Okay, the second thing that he mentioned is recommended. So what is recommended is to pray more than 5 prayers.
Oh,
right?
really? Oh,
Yeah.
that's good.
So basically, what we know from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, like he wouldn't just pray 5 prayers. He's also praying at night, in the middle of the night. He's praying like the salat al-duha, right? Before duha. And so there are different times he's praying. And when we use the word prayers, it's hard because in English we have 2 different types of prayers, and we have the same word in English language. So there's one prayer which we saw downstairs, right? How people were praying in a formal manner, right?
Yeah, okay.
So that requires that you need to have washed yourself and well that, okay? Now there's another thing. So there are more recommended prayers as well. So this is recommended is if you don't pray, you're not sinning. You have done the bare minimum, but if you want to excel, you can pray more. Okay. Now there's another type of prayer which you mentioned is basically thinking about God or talking to God. Okay. So that is also what we would call prayer in English. But in Arabic, it's called mindfulness or remembrance of God, or the Arabic word will be dhikr, right, or dua. So that is something that we are recommended to do as much as possible because that's what keep you mindful, right, and conscious of God. To the point that just like you're sitting, right, oh God, help me, oh, teach me. Well, you could just be talking, with voice or without voice in your head, and that's really recommended. And on top of that, what we also have is we have a specific form of praises and remembrance of God and supplications for different occasions, right? So you may have noticed that, when we were shaking hands downstairs, many people were saying, Assalamu alaikum.
Yeah.
So that is a prayer,
Okay.
which means that peace be with you.
Yeah, or peace be upon you.
Peace be upon you, peace be with you, right? And As-salam is also one of the name of God because all peace and all security is from Him.
Right.
So that's a prayer on the occasion of meeting each other, and also when you leave each other. You still say Assalamu alaikum, you leave in peace, you meet in peace, right? When you wear clothes, right, there's a prayer for that. Right? When you complete your ablution, there's a prayer for that. These are all recommended. So if you don't do it, you're not sinning. You can also say it in English. You can also be mindful. But I'm just saying that the being conscious. But all those things kind of go in the second category, which is recommended. And then obviously you can just flip those 2 things. So the flip of obligation would be not do it, prohibition, right? So that is also, you may have heard of the word called haram, right? So it's impermissible. You should not do it. If you do it, you're sinning, right? And then coming on the flip of recommended is something that is disliked or discouraged. So you are not hitting the boundary of sin, but it's discouraged to do that, all right? So that's as an example of that. And then in the middle is things that are open, right? So for example, you're wearing, I don't know, blue, right? You're also wearing blue, I don't know. But I mean, obviously it's different shades of blue, but it's blue to me from an RGB perspective. The point being that, you can wear different colors, right? Whatever, right? You could have different types of water, different types of food. So in general, those are open things. As we said, it's just some boundaries, and then you can do whatever, right? So you're working in car, you're working in accounting, you're working with the trees. It's all different choices, different forms, right? And we're not going to say, oh, one is better than the other or what have you, unless you have another specific intention behind it, right? So yes, I'm wearing this because not only is it a random thing, but because my wife likes it or my mom likes it, right? So now you have a second intention behind it. So obviously there's, reward for it to make your mom happy, your wife happy or whatever. But in general, it's an open thing, right? I'm choosing to reduce coffee, or I'm eating healthier, right? So you have rewards for it, but in general, those are open things. So these are the 5 layers. So it's not everything is like yes, no, but you have like a spectrum, right? So that's what I meant by the 5 types of law.